Thank you for joining me on 13 Plus. I'm Cali Lichter, and this is On the Docket, a weekly recap of crime and court in and around the state of Michigan. Revived hope in a Mason County murder cold case, what new evidence investigators found after over 3 decades. And we break down why a man got more prison time than anticipated after being sentenced for a Walmart rampage. All of that and more is On the Docket. We traveled up to Mason County as the sheriff announced new significant developments in a Mason County cold case from over 3 decades ago. The body of 15-year-old Melissa Simmons was found in the Pere Marquette River just days after she went missing. In early August, her body was dug up with permission from her family. I went to the press conference where the sheriff talked about the progress in Melissa's case and why it has haunted him. Renewed hope in the investigation into 15-year-old Melissa Simmons' 1993 murder as detectives find new DNA evidence and exhumed her body on August 8th.
We are committed to this case and will continue with our efforts for as long as it takes to seek justice for Missy, her family, and our community.
This is a case that has haunted Mason County Sheriff Kim Cole, who is the only remaining member of the sheriff's office from 3 decades ago. Melissa went missing in June of '93 and was last seen alive near the Wesco in Scottville. A few days later, her body would be found brutally beaten in the Pere Marquette River west of the Indian Bridge in Custer Township.
From the day Melissa went missing, this case has haunted me since that time. No community ever wants to lose one of its members, but when you have a young teenage girl go missing and days later be found murdered, it not only shakes our residents, but it shakes law enforcement as well.
The investigation into her murder was revived a few years ago when detectives going over all the evidence, re-interviewing witnesses, and conducting over 100 interviews. There was evidence that was determined to be significant to the case, which was hand-delivered to a crime lab in Virginia. From there, a DNA profile was established.
There was evidence that was determined to be of value that was significant enough that we flew Detective Boyd to Virginia through Reagan National in Washington, D.C. to hand deliver a specimen to a lab in Virginia.
With all the work, investigators say it was necessary to dig up her body, which is not a decision Cole takes lightly.
While the decision was not taken lightly, it is the right one to do. In my 40-year career, I can't recall ever exhuming a body here in Mason County.
The sheriff's office would not say what evidence they have gathered so far or if they have a prime suspect. A mother says her fight for justice for her daughter is far from over, more than 30 years after her murder. Jason Simmons was 16 when he was convicted of killing 5-year-old Nicole Van Note in Calhoun County in 1994. He is now appealing his conviction. She explains to our Lauren Baker why she has to continue to fight.
For Robin Boynanato, not a day goes by.
Nicole is constantly on my heart. Nicole is constantly in my brain.
That she doesn't think about her daughter, Nicole Van Note.
She was my only daughter, my last child. Everyone loved Nicole.
Described as a tomboy who made friends easy, Boynanato says her daughter was full of life until...
Why did you kill Nicole? Why?
It was taken away.
Why didn't you just let her live?
Her daughter was raped and killed by her friend's stepbrother, Jason Simons, in 1994, when Van Note was 5 and Simons was 16. Since then, after numerous life sentence convictions, resentencings, and denied parole, Simons is appealing his case this year.
I think it's ridiculous. You already been sentenced to a year's second life term in prison. Why don't you just accept it? I feel like he needs to just die. Sorry.
13 on Your Side has reached out to his lawyer, and we plan to conduct an interview regarding Simon's appeal in the future. Boynanato says the judges presiding over this case shouldn't give him a second chance.
Don't do it. Don't give him that opportunity to go out and hurt another baby. Because now he's wiser. Now he's like, I feel like if they do let him out, and if he does this again, he won't get caught.
Which is why she says she'll continue to push for Simons to remain behind bars.
I'm not going to stop fighting at all. Until my last breath, I promised.
His appeal hearing is scheduled for November 13th. Lauren will be sitting down to talk to the attorney about the case before then. A father and son are found guilty of burning down their business more than 2 years ago. David Robinson and Ryan Robinson co-owned Charlie's Family Grill in White Cloud. They were both found guilty of committing arson to insured real property, and Ryan Robinson was also found guilty to 2 counts of false pretenses. A March 2023 fire destroyed Charlie's Family Grill. Firefighters had difficulty entering the building due to the debris inside. They'll be sentenced in November with their bond revoked due to witnesses' fear of animosity and jurors taking notice of people in the gallery who were associated with the Robinsons who appeared to be photographing them. Next on the docket, we have the chilling 911 calls from the moment a small plane crashed in Kent County, leaving 2 men dead, and a happy ending to a pride flag being stolen from a Grand Haven church. It's been almost a month since a deadly plane crash in Lowell that killed both men on board when it crashed into a storage facility. We're digging into the 911 calls made amid the chaos, revealing what emergency crews and neighbors experienced as flames and smoke engulfed the scene. Our Kiara Patterson looked over the 911 calls, which captured neighbors' panic and confusion as the plane crashed and caught fire.
It's on fire. I don't know.
It's on fire?
Yes, I can't see it from my house. I just see all the smoke.
911 dispatchers were flooded with calls just after 4:30 p.m. on July 21st. Witnesses describing a plane crashing near Lincoln Lake and Virgins in Lowell.
There's big plumes of black smoke. There's a bunch of people pulled over.
Oh, there's the storage units that I heard an explosion or something, and it's on fire over here.
Kent County deputies at the scene say the small plane crashed into the Whistle Stop storage facility, sparking a massive fire.
We were called here at 4:30. Deputies arrived. Witnesses said that a small plane went down into the storage facility here at the corner of Lincoln Lake and Virgins, which started fire.
Neighbor Amy Sake first thought it was just a building fire, but soon realized it was far worse.
It was just black smoke everywhere. You could see the flames getting larger and larger. So it was, you could feel the tenseness of the situation, and everybody was, looking pretty nervous.
2 men, 62-year-old Kevin Lawrence and 68-year-old Paul Schock, died in the crash. Aviation expert Gregory Feith says investigators will focus on many factors to determine the cause.
The investigators will be looking at aircraft performance as part of this. Summertime weather with winds and high temperatures always has an effect. All of these are factors that investigators should be examining.
We reached out to the National Transportation Safety Board handling the investigation, but have not heard back. A church in West Michigan is without its flag after a theft, or so it was. A Grand Haven Episcopal church says a woman stole their pride flag right off of their front entrance. Arlena Holland shows how it was all caught on camera.
It does reflect that deeper sickness in our culture.
A pride flag stolen by this woman.
LGBTQ people and advocacy for LGBTQ people for some reason is seen as threatening or dangerous for the broader culture.
Right from the front entrance of St. John's Episcopal Church in Grand Haven late Friday night.
That I would hope, particularly in Western Michigan, which is a generally more religious culture, that if someone walks by a church and sees something they don't agree with, their response isn't, I'm going to do something against that church, or I'm going to take that thing I don't disagree with.
Father Jared Kramer says this woman's boyfriend has since called the church, saying she was drunk at the time when she decided to take the flag. He said she is sorry and will return it.
We're happy to take the flag back, to forgive her and to accept her expression of contrition. At the same time, the reality that in our culture today, if someone is drunk and they see a pride flag, their response is to want to do something negative to that flag, to take it, to desecrate it. To do something like that is just very deeply disturbing. It demonstrates precisely why the pride flag is essential in places like a church, to mark it off as safe space.
This is not the first time this has happened at the church.
But we had one that was stolen a couple years ago. That was a much more kind of violent act of someone like physically tore it off the pole. Never found that person, never got it back.
Father Kramer has even purchased a backup flagpole for times just like these.
But yeah, we will absolutely keep buying flagpoles and buying flags as long as we have to make sure that people always know when they walk by or drive by St. John's that this is a safe place for the queer community.
He's glad the woman regrets what she did. But Father Kramer says it's poor decisions like this that put the value of the community on display, whether we like it or not.
And hopefully this is just a moment for us all to maybe take a step back and ask, the choices we make, whether we're sober or not sober, but the choices we make reflect larger realities. And maybe we should all consider those choices a little more carefully.
Now with a happy ending, that woman who stole the flag has returned it with a donation. The woman's boyfriend later called the church saying she was drunk at the time and that she is sorry. The church's pastor is encouraging those who were upset about what happened to also make a donation to their local pride organization. Next on the docket, we dive deeper into why an Ottawa County man received a longer prison sentence than anticipated. Hear the full sentencing breakdown of Gavin Love next. On August 11th, a man was sentenced to 34 months to 10 years in prison for mass destruction at a Holland Walmart. Gavin Love caused thousands in damages in March of 2025. He pleaded guilty to the rampage with the charge of damaging police officer property being dropped. We'll break down the whole sentencing for you, starting with the prosecutor who asked that Love get a longer sentence outside of his guidelines.
Just a brief allocution, Your Honor. Obviously, the guideline range is currently at 0 to 16 months. Given the nature of the offense, one thing that the court can look at when going over guideline range would be whether or not the proportionality of the sentence equals the crime which was committed. Here, clearly, Your Honor, the defendant caused great disturbance while a number of civilians were inside of a Walmart. And given the nature of the offense and the actions of the defendant, the people do believe that it would be appropriate for Your Honor to go over guidelines and sentence the defendant to the Michigan Department of Corrections.
But Love's attorney disagreed, saying Love accepts responsibility for his actions and should be sentenced in his recommended guidelines.
Your Honor, defense did submit a sentencing memo to the court, so we rely heavily on that, Your Honor. But in addition to that, Your Honor, Gavin Love stands here before the court accepting responsibility for his actions. I think his actions while this case has been pending has demonstrated that he didn't run his prelim, he didn't have a trial, Your Honor. Gavin Love has also been spending his time while lodged reflecting on himself and how he kind of ended up in this situation, Your Honor. He could have easily shut down and wallowed, but he's been working on himself to kind of set himself up for success moving forward. We talked about employers that are felony friendly. We talked about a plan to pay back the restitution, Your Honor. So Gavin Love has been trying to use his time as beneficially as possible to make the parties whole and to hopefully move on from this, Your Honor. He's a young man who made a poor choice, but we asked the court to have the consequence be what the recommendation is, Your Honor. I don't believe this will define Gavin. He's learned a lot from this incident, Your Honor, so we asked the recommendation.
Love also addressed the court, saying he did what he did because it was his way of letting it out.
I walked into a Walmart and destroyed stuff. Why I did it, the best way I can describe is the feeling of wanting to scream and nobody letting it out. No way to let it out. Now I'm now on Icarus. I've flown too close to the sun and now I'm paying for my action. I ask Your Honor, my grandpa is dying of cancer and he only has a year left, and I like to say goodbye before he goes.
Judge John Holsing did not hold back when sentencing Love, bringing up his prior criminal record. Love was just 5 days out of jail for another serious crime when he committed the Walmart rampage, which the judge says poses Love a risk to the community. Take a listen on how he uses that criminal record and Love's actions while being arrested and in court to determine the sentence.
Under People v. Lockridge, the legislative guidelines are advisory, not mandatory. However, any sentence imposed within accurately scored guidelines is presumptively proportional. The legislature intended more serious commissions of a crime given by persons with a history of criminal behavior to receive harsher sentences than relatively less serious breaches of the same penal statute by first-time offenders. This legislative intent is the touchstone upon which our Supreme Court has determined that sentences imposed by the trial court be proportionate to the seriousness of the circumstances surrounding the offense and the offender. In making this assessment, the judge, of course, must take into account the nature of the offense and the background of the offender. To determine whether a sentence imposed outside the guidelines is proportionate, the court must address the following factors: the seriousness of the offense for which you now stand convicted, factors not considered by the guidelines, whether or not circumstances are adequately embodied within the variables, post-offense misconduct, expressions of remorse, potential for rehabilitation. The court will address these matters. The seriousness of the offense. This is a property crime, and property crimes are generally considered less serious than a crime against person, and appropriately so. However, in this case, you destroyed 6 TVs at Walmart, then grabbed a metal pole and shattered 2 glass doors before damaging items on your way to the dairy aisle, where you took the pole and shattered an additional 15 glass doors on the coolers, causing over $12,000 in damages in just a few moments. Again, this was a Walmart, a retail center that serves hundreds of persons a day of all ages, including, presumably, single females who were not present with any other mates, minor children, and older persons. It is not difficult to imagine that there were dozens of persons inside the store when this occurred. Families should not fear that when going grocery shopping, they may be subject to a madman who trashes the store. While this was a property offense, it is of the type that can cause fear in a community. It can affect the public's perceptions of safety in public places that should be safe from this type of misconduct. The guidelines do not reflect that you have 2 failed periods of probation. The violations which led to the revocation involve new criminal activity. The guidelines do not reflect that you were on probation for a relatively brief periods of time prior to the probation revocations. In the present crime, you were only out of jail for 5 days before trashing Walmart. Regarding remorse, you indicate in the PSI that you simply want to get this behind you and be done with probation. The comments that you just made express more concern about your family situation than with the victims and the members of the public who may have been subject to your misconduct. That doesn't not sound like a lot of remorse. It sounds more about self-preservation. Regarding rehabilitation, the PSI, which was prepared for your car theft and R&O convictions, reflect the following quote from you: "If I had the option of doing it again, I would do it again." This was after you admitted you lied in order to obtain car keys, steal a car, and intentionally drive the vehicle into a ditch. You did much more than intentionally drive the vehicle into a ditch. You ran the vehicle into 2 trees and a home, a residence. The car was totaled. It is obvious that this was an intentional act. You were then in a standoff with the police. Again, this conduct for which you now stand convicted occurred only 5 days after getting out of jail for trashing the car. There is no evidence of post-offense misconduct while you have been incarcerated. Given these factors, the court determined that any sentence within the guidelines would be disproportionately lenient, as discussed in detail above, because the guidelines do not adequately address the facts of this case and the danger that you present to the law-abiding community. Rather, a proportionate sentence requires a greater minimum sentence. I should also note that your attorney indicated that you pled straight up and waived the prelim. You also got a benefit because you apparently damaged a police car after being arrested on this. So there was another benefit to your obtaining the plea offer. The bottom line is that the legislature has determined that a person with your criminal history can be considered a D-level offender for prior record variables. Because of this, and for the reasons stated above, the court will sentence you within the D2 scale for the E-crime, which is 7 to 34. For the reasons stated above, and protect the public from your escalating criminal behavior while sending a message to you and others who would consider such misconduct, that maximum sentence under that cell is going to be imposed.
Love was sentenced to 34 months, roughly 3 years, to 120 months, which is 10 years, in the Michigan Department of Corrections. He has 143 days credit and must pay $12,490.76 in restitution. Thanks for joining me in this episode of On the Docket on 13+. We have new episodes releasing every week, taking you into the courtroom for the latest updates and deep dives on crime in and around West Michigan. In the meantime, we will bring you the latest on crime and court, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. And when breaking news affects you and your community, we stream live on 13+ with what you need to know right when you need to know. We'll see you next time with updates on what's on the docket.